Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Hard Claim with Viva La Sam. I'm Sam, and this is a show where we talk to people who play Blood on the Clocktower and get their player perspective of the game. We're talking to several people who help run Final Three Con in Washington, D.C., so joining us this week is Kohava. Welcome.
Hello, I'm excited.
Thank you for being here. Before we really get going, what is Final Three Con, and what is your role there?
Final Three Con is a social gaming convention. It's the same people who have run Clocktower Con in DC for the last 2 years. We're just changing up the name and adding a few more games that aren't just Clocktower, but if you love Blood on the Clocktower, you will love everything about the convention. So it's happening in Washington, DC this April.
All right, excellent. So you picked out a script here that you've written. It's called "Just Want to Have Fun," version 4. So I passed out characters. You've drawn the Pixie token. In the night, I would wake you and show you the Slayer token.
Oh, that's exciting.
So maybe this is a little obvious, but usually what we do is you ask, "What would you like to claim?"
What would I be claiming with Pixie Slayer? I would tell everyone I was the Slayer.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, unfortunate question.
So how would you play that, I guess, throughout the game, though? Would you just try to Slayer shot each day? Would you try to find a Slayer? What would your strategy there be?
Let me look at the script that I have written again. Yeah, so I think there isn't that much opportunity for the demon to move. There's Imp and there's Barber as far as the demon moving. So as the Pixie Slayer, I'm not going to actually Slayer shoot unless I think people need me to maintain my Pixie madness. But I am expecting to get the Slayer ability eventually. So I'm still trying to figure out who the demon is or who I think the demon is early game so I can remember that late game if I get the Slayer ability. Pixie Slayer isn't going to get feedback at night if they got the ability or not. So I need to talk to the dead people continuously, figure out who's double claiming me. Slayer is not super difficult because Slayers are generally happy to shoot and die. So if I can get the Slayer to shoot and use their shot and then die, I can get my ability and we can get 2 Slayer shots. I think Slayer is one of the higher priority targets for a demon on this script, unfortunately, but me claiming Slayer does give the Slayer some cover, so hopefully one of us gets a Slayer shot off, is what I'm thinking. Yeah, going into the first night. So I'm thinking I'm gonna get the Slayer ability, so who do I think the demon is? It's not that difficult to claim Slayer to everybody I talk to. So I'll just do that and try to locate the actual Slayer and also get them killed.
I was going to say with the Pixie, which is one of my favorite characters in the game, it's interesting when the ability is not something that wakes at night because you don't get that feedback of when you get the ability, and I think that's a kind of an interesting, I guess, wrinkle with Pixie.
Pixie is, if not my favorite, then like top 5. I don't know. I love Pixie. It's probably my
Really
favorite townsfolk. I'll say that. Yeah, it's so fun. And if depending on the game, I can also choose to just be someone who is confirming the Slayer player. Like if the Slayer is a new player and it's a game of experienced folks, or if if the Slayers had a couple of bad games in a row and I want them to have a good game, I can just choose to, once I figure out who the Slayer is, to just confirm them and not gain my ability. I like the flexibility of the Pixie to either be extra abilities in the game or to be like a weaker washerwoman and do some
Right.
soft confirmation. So that's another choice I have. I'm unlikely to do it because I like being mad and I like getting extra abilities. But I'm aware that that option exists.
Yeah. All right. Well, so we're talking about Blood on the Clocktower. When and how did you discover the game?
So my first exposure to the game was when Shut Up and Sit Down came out with their review video of the game. I've been a fan of Shut Up and Sit Down for a really, really long time. um, so I watched that video. I was like, this sounds so cool. I love Avalon, The Resistance, Secret Hitler, those sorts of games. And I love telling stories with my friends. Like, I was already sort of into RPGs at that time. And the Shut Up and Sit Down review video was very, like, thematic. Like, they had, like, candles and stuff. So I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is, like, also sort of thematic. But I didn't have the confidence to make a bunch of people play the game with me. So I made a cardboard copy of the game, and I ran it for my friends a couple of times. And I just like cut out Trouble Brewing onto cardboard and felt. Um, and it went pretty well. I didn't have that many people, so it was mostly like 7 and 8 player games, and it happened like twice. And then COVID hit. And I lurked on the unofficial Blood on the Clocktower Discord for about 6 months until I played a game. And then I started playing and I never stopped. So I started playing. My first time playing was after I'd already story told a couple of times for my friends. And my first time playing was on Discord in the COVID days. Yeah.
That Discord's still going very strong and playing
Oh,
games.
yeah.
Pretty sure if I look on there right now, there's about 2 or 3 games going all at the same time.
Always, always. Yeah. It's a great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
But there's lots of other Blood on the Clocktower discords and communities now. That's not
Yeah,
the only place to go anymore,
including here at Hardclaim.
including here at Hardclaim.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, do you remember what your first game or several games were like? The ones that you played in
I
yourself.
Yeah, I know my first game. I don't know if you know who Duke is, but he was a storyteller. He's
Oh
still
yeah, yeah.
around in the Blood on the Clocktower community.
Mm-hmm.
I was the monk. Uh, I'm not really sure how it went. I do remember someone asking me if I was a child because my voice was quite and is quite high pitched, and it was a voice only game. Um, I think good one. I think I just hard claimed monk to everybody. I don't think I did anything special. um, yeah, it was years ago, but I kept on playing, so it must have been pretty good. I remember an early game, one of my first S&V games. I was the pit hag, and I, without the consent of my demon, turned them into a different demon, and then they were a little bit upset at me
Oh
because
no.
they didn't want to have turned into a different demon. Um, so I learned to talk to my demon after that. Um, yeah, those are like early memories.
Right. At what point would you say you were hooked, and what hooked you about the game?
I mean, I was hooked before I even played. So I watched the review and then proceeded to consume all of the Blood on the Clocktower, the content that existed at that time, which was the 3 original videos on the Blood on the Clocktower YouTube channel. They're live playthroughs,
Mm-hmm.
where Evan is like explaining his storytelling, and Cult of the Clocktower. So I think I listened, because this is when I was first getting into it. I think I listened to every Trouble Brewing episode of Cult of the Clocktower like 3 or 4 times, because that was the only content that I had. So I'd go on a walk and I just put on an episode of Cult of the Clocktower, and that would be my walk, for like an hour or something. So I would say I was hooked on the game before I started playing. And then I started playing and I was like, yeah, it's great. I'm in. But I'm one of those people that, like, if I like something, I'm just gonna consume everything that exists about it uh before, like, to just understand what it is and then dive in. And the more that I watched and listened to and I would observe games, the more I was like, this is it. This is it. I love this game.
How often do you get to play currently each week?
I have the opportunity to play a lot more than I do. There was a period in my life where I was playing way too much, like every day for hours. No longer. I have real life groups that I play with every Sunday now, and some Saturdays, like I would say 2 or 3 Saturdays. So my weekends are mostly Blood on the Clock Tower. But and sometimes I play online. You can find me on some streams, maybe if I pop in. Um, and I would say my online play is more sporadic, just because I like playing with my real world people, but I still play online. I don't know. I still play a lot. Definitely like most of Sundays, I'm playing Blood on the Clock Tower, and then usually like once or twice otherwise in a week.
So with the, I always like asking about the in-person games. So you played online first, correct?
Oh yeah, I was an online first player. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what was it like when you first played your first in-person game after having played online?
I body language was so much.
Hmm.
So like also when I was playing originally, it was just a voice game. I remember when I was evil starting out, I would get like shivers. Like my body would get cold. So I would actually put on like a sweater when I was evil cuz I would feel physically cold. Um and you can't do that in person. You can't be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I need a sweater." Suddenly, I feel cold. Um, yeah, so I think some of my first in-person games were like an early Origins, like the first Origins after the pandemic, that board gaming convention. Um, I just remember I was mostly thrilled. um, so I mean, I did some after school theater as a kid, so I understand like the concept of body language and like physical acting through your body. So I feel like I caught on pretty quick to like knowing that I had to use my face and body, but it was a definitely a transition. And also like on camera games are similar cuz now I can't like laugh maniacally when I'm winning as evil and just mute. I have to keep a straight face until the end of the game, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Right.
But mostly, yeah, it was like just invigorating. Um,
So what do you think it's like playing specifically in a convention setting? And adding on to that, why should people come to Final Three Con to play?
Conventions are like my favorite place to play Blood on the Clock Tower because you're just surrounded with people who also want to do the thing you love to do. And you were the same people for like several days, so if you're playing the same games with the same people or even just like a couple of games with the same people, you get to know them and you get to know their play style. Like what I really like about how I experience board game conventions is how everyone else is going to experience Final Three Con, because you just get to play Blood on the Clock Tower for like 3 or 4 days straight, which is what I do at normal gaming conventions, and not everyone does that. I understand. I'm the
Hmm.
weird one. Um, but I just feel like it you experience, you meet people, you become friends, you have a shared interest, and then your games get more tight and interesting as your social reads become better over the course of like a few days because you're in such a locked in environment. um I don't know, I just feel like there's a special kind of magic I feel at board game conventions that I don't feel in too many other places, where it's like everybody here wants to be here, and there's so much like positive energy, and like everyone's just having a good time and meeting people and excited to meet people and excited to play the game that I want to play. So you should come to Final Three Con if you want to be in a room of people who love the same things as you and talk to them and do all the things you love together. Um, and like hear other people talk about the game in ways you haven't thought of, and meet cool people like me. um, and yeah, it's just like, I don't know if you ever went to like sleepaway camp as a kid. It feels like that, it's just like all your friends, one place, all only fun things like sleepaway camp without having to go camping in the woods because I didn't like that part of it. But I love being with my friends. So yeah.
Yeah, I unfortunately didn't get to go this year, but I got to go last year for the first one, and I mean, yeah, it was. You used the word magical, and I feel like that fits pretty well. You could sit next to anybody anywhere and just already have the connection of Clocktower, and you had at least that in common. And yeah, I don't know, it was
And
just
then
a really great
you guys
experience.
learn how much else you had in common after
Right,
that.
right. So you mentioned a few other social deduction games. I'm curious how much experience you have with those and how they compare, in your opinion, with Clock Tower.
Yeah, I played like Avalon and the Resistance. I really liked them. In my like board game group in high school, nobody trusted me. Like I was the person that they were like, she's always evil, that sort of thing. After I got into Clock Tower, I played some other games that I liked just because I was always in the deception area at conventions. So um, I've played some werewolf since getting into Clock Tower. Um, Honestly, it helped if you if you think like me and you're like, how can I be better at Clock Tower? Honestly, playing werewolf is a good way to improve your social reads for Clock Tower. So at Decepticon one year, I went to bed at a normal time and nobody else did. So I woke up at like 7 a.m. and I would go downstairs. No, there was no clock tower running. I would join the werewolf games with the people who had stayed up all night playing werewolf. So early in the morning. So that was some fun, like half delirious, sleep deprived werewolf that I really enjoyed. Um, I think Clock Tower is the best social deception game for me because I love lying and deception and figuring out if other people are lying. And I love logic puzzles and putting information together and like figuring out how everything works together. So for me, Clock Tower scratches like both of those, like the theater kid itch in me and the like logic puzzler in me. I've played like other games that I've enjoyed, but if you ask me which social deduction game I would want to play, I would just say this one.
All right. So you're sitting down, getting ready to draw your token. Do you hope that it's a blue or red token?
I hope that it's a blue token. I wonder how many people give you that answer. I prefer to be good. When I'm evil, I'll fully commit and I enjoy being evil. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't dread being evil. Um, but for me, the real joy in the game comes from understanding and solving the logic puzzle. And so when you're evil, you already know the answer to the puzzle, and the game comes. It's a different kind of puzzle. It's like misdirecting and making the puzzle harder to solve for everyone else, which is like interesting and fun and like really rewarding when you win as evil. Um, but I play to solve the puzzle as good. Like that's my favorite thing.
What kind of characters do you like to play? Do you like the information characters that help you solve that puzzle? Do you like the passive abilities, power abilities?
I mean, I guess I love the pixie. So you can guess that I sort of like most characters. Um, I also like playing philosopher. I like playing characters that are flexible and have several strategies to win with. And I think a lot of Clocktower characters fall under that. Um, there isn't really a character that I would say, ugh, if I drew it out of the bag. Like even if I have a character that like doesn't get information, like say I drew Zealot out of the bag, I'm not going to get information from the storyteller. Um but then I'm like, okay, so now I don't have to worry about my information. I can just watch everyone else. I guess if I'm Zealot, I'm paying extra attention to votes. And like find another aspect of the game to figure out and work on. So I guess my token that I draw out of the bag is going to determine the style of my gameplay. But I'm pretty adaptable to what that is. I don't know. Like sometimes if I draw like a really strong role, like I guess Dreamer on this script, I'm like, oh boy, I have to survive. I have to try hard because good team is depending on my character. Um, uh, but if I draw something like Shugenja, sometimes I can just relax and just be like, well, I get my info and then I just have to, like, I don't have to worry about staying alive. So sometimes I find the powerful characters stressful because I feel like I owe it to the good team to live and get my information. So
I think that gives a hint as to your answer for this next question. But if you're evil, do you prefer to be in a demon or a minion?
interesting. I don't think that that answers your question. I prefer
Okay.
to be a demon.
Okay.
Um, because my strength as evil is looking good. It's not causing chaos. I'm very what I'm good at when I'm evil is getting people to trust me, which is what the demon needs. The
Right.
minion needs people to pay attention to them. And I'm less good at drawing fire and causing chaos. So I feel like when I'm evil, I'm stronger when I'm a demon. I do enjoy playing as minions and I enjoy playing as demons, but I feel like just my social style of evil play is better suited to draw to the demon.
Cool.
Yeah.
What kind of characters do you like to bluff? And this is whether you're good or evil, either one.
Um, I don't know. I'll bluff anything. I had a phase where I bluffed Innkeeper a lot when I was evil on Bad Moon Rising because it's a very flexible bluff. It lets you tell good players they were drunk and stuff. Um, I don't know. I do tend to stick with my bluffs as the demon, and just try to like fly under the radar and look good, instead of like claiming something that isn't one of my bluffs. I'm pretty flexible. I don't mind making up info. I don't mind having a no info bluff. Sometimes if I'm dealing with a very complicated game, like if I'm the Al Hadikia or something, I'm not gonna bluff Savant because that's just too much mental load. But I would bluff Savant as like Imp or something that doesn't have to care that much about thinking really hard about who they're gonna kill. Um, yeah,
All
I
right.
I'll bluff whatever the storyteller gives me to bluff for the most part and just like go for it. And if I'm good, I'll bluff like the character that the opposite of the demon would want to kill or not. And just go with that usually. Like it's not a like very deep thinking process, I think.
That's fair. Uh, so thinking about the base scripts, Trouble Brewing, Bad Moon Rising, Sex and Violets, do you have one that you prefer over the others?
Gosh. Not really. I
Just like
I
them
love
all.
them all. Yeah. I think I'm most if you tell me to pick one, I'm going to pick Trouble Brewing just because like if I can't control any of the other variables, like if I don't know who the storyteller is, if I don't know who I'm playing with, Trouble Brewing is the most likely to give me a solid game every time. Like, it's the most reliable. But
Hmm.
if I trust my storyteller and I know who I'm playing with, then I'll play any of them forever. um, yeah, it requires like different mindsets, but I love all three of those mindsets. So yeah.
All right. And what are your thoughts on Madness?
I, as a storyteller, run Madness in a very specific way. So when I am introducing my players to the concept of madness, um, I have a spiel. I say madness is actively trying to convince people about something. So you can be mad that somebody is the demon if you're going around and telling everyone that, hey, this player is the demon. Um, on Sex and Violets, which is my Intro to Madness script, there's two characters that have to do with madness. There's the mutant and the Cerenovus. The mutant is an outsider. If they are ever mad about being an outsider, they can get executed. So what this means is if you ever try to convince anyone that you're an outsider, I can execute you. Trying to convince someone you're an outsider can be going up to someone and saying, hey, I'm an outsider, but it can also be, I'm definitely not an outsider. If you
Right.
know what I mean, that's execution worthy because you are trying to convince them you're an outsider. It's not about what you say, it's about if you're trying to be convincing. Um
As a quick aside, real quick, my favorite example is I walked into a chat and they were talking. The mutant was talking about X-Men.
exactly. That's execution worthy because you're bringing a thought into the other player's mind that you are an outsider. Um, for the Cerenovus, I will wake you up at night. I'll show you this character selected you, Cerenovus, and then I'll show you another token. The second token is the token you are actively trying to convince everybody else that that is what you are. I don't care if they believe you. I care if you are doing your best to convince them as hard as you can. And the another key word here is active. So if a lot of my players are coming to S&B from Trouble Brewing, so I usually use Raven Keeper here. If you were made mad to be the Raven Keeper in Trouble Brewing, a valid strategy as the Raven Keeper is to sit quietly and still and not do anything and just hope the demon kills you because you might be a powerful role. That's not going to cut it for madness. I need you to do your best to convince people you are the Raven Keeper. Now, I don't need you to tell anyone that you are the Raven Keeper. You can, if you think the best way to convince someone you're the Raven Keeper is to hard claim fortune teller in public and claim Raven Keeper to as many people as possible in private, that works for me. What I care about is you're doing your damn best to make other people think that's the character you are. So I judge based on effort and if they're trying to convince people. I don't need a public claim of the character they're mad as.
Hmm.
And I find that this method works best for experienced groups that have sort of gotten around madness and figured it out, because the onus is on the player to be convincing. And if they're not trying their hardest, and I know some of my experienced players pretty well, then I will execute them. And for new players, if it's anybody's first time playing Sex and Violets, I will warn them. I'll give them one warning when they're mad before they get executed. But everybody else does not get one warning. I just execute them. So yeah, that's how madness works for me.
Fair
Um,
enough. So as a player, how do you, I guess, how do you approach Madness when you're playing, and what is it about it that you enjoy?
well, given that my favorite character is the pixie, um, I hard commit. I think madness is so silly and fun. And I think there's a little actor in me that just wants to be assigned a role to play in life. So madness is like it's it's a free pass to lie as a good player and have no consequences because I was mad, and I like that freedom. I don't mind being made mad as a Cerenovus for the first few days of Sex and Violets because the evil team isn't going to know what I am. Like, they're not going to know what my role is. I will collect information. They'll keep me alive because I'm spreading misinformation to the good team. And maybe I'll actually, like, get to use my ability as long as I'm convincingly mad, which I have faith in myself to be. Um, I have been Serenovus mad as a different character every day in like a 5-day SNV game once, and that was stressful. But the first few days, it's not so bad. And yeah, with stuff like Pixie, it's just fun. It's in it. It's a fun puzzle for the good team. I think you can tell that I love Madness because this script is called Just Wanna Have Fun, and it's the characters that I think are fun and work together, and I've got Serenovus Mutant and Pixie on this script, so you can tell that I think Madness is a fun mechanic for the game. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I like asking people about what I kind of loosely define as divisive characters to see what they think.
I'm ready. I'm ready to drop some opinions.
So the first one, it's the only base character, and it's from Sex and Violets. What do you think about Snake Charmer?
I think Snake Charmer is an advanced character on an intermediate script. Snake Charmer is very powerful for the good team, maybe not so good for the Snake Charmer player themselves. I think too many people really want to win as the Snake Charmer picking the demon and then repetitively lose because it's very difficult and should not be your goal. I think as a Snake Charmer, your job is to be ready to be the demon. So you should, if you are charming, you should not be telling anyone you're the Snake Charmer. Because as soon as someone knows you're the Snake Charmer and the demon comes out as Snake Charmed, you're going to get executed. So the Snake Charmer has to pick an out-of-play character that's not an evil bluff, which is like, there's usually like 1 to 3 of those, depending on your outsider count and your player count. You have to pick an out-of-play character that's not an evil bluff and commit to it if you want to seriously be charming. You can new Snake Charmers should remember that they can pick themselves, and that's okay. And demons should bluff that they are Snake Charmed more towards the end of the game when the Snake Charmer is still alive. So like at 5 players alive or 3 players alive, and you know one of them else is a Snake Charmer, that is one of the best times to claim Snake Charmed Demon. I see a lot of people claiming it more early on in the game when it can be figured out. But if there is an outed Snake Charmer that you haven't killed, one of your best plays is claiming that the Snake Charmer did pick you, and you're actually good, and good team needs to execute them. Bonus points if you have a pit hag alive, so you can get them to kill the pit hag, and then the new demon that's still the old Snake Charmer, and you can just sometimes win that way. So I don't know what else. Yeah, Snake Charmer is usually played in a way that I don't agree with, but more power to you if you want to give yourself a really difficult challenge. I think as a player who prefers to play for the good team, it's a bit foreign to me. But when I am the Snake Charmer, I prepare to become the demon, not because I want to, but because I know I'm going to use my ability as effectively for my team as possible, and if that means I hit the demon, then I'm going to be playing for evil. So I plan ahead for that until I've charmed enough people or I'm dead that I feel like I can come out. Yeah, I feel like Snake Charmer is the character on Sex and Violence that is the most difficult character to play on that script.
Yeah, I think that makes
especially
sense.
new players. So I think it gets a lot of flack, almost rightly so, because I think it works. It works on Sex and Violence, but being Snake Charmer is harder than any other character you could draw out of that bag. Yeah.
And that's why I think it's interesting to ask everybody about it and see what they think about it.
Yeah.
All right. Our next character on the list is Poppy Grower. How do you feel about that?
Do not like Poppy Grower. I think it is overpowered.
Fair.
um, I want to know my evil friends. It makes me like I have had great games that were Poppy Grower games when I was evil. They feel like struggles. You feel alone. Like I feel like part of the game's promise to you if you are evil is you are in the minority, but you have friends and you're not alone. And with Poppy Grower, you just feel like alone. Um and I've been the Poppy Grower as good several times, and I feel like, oh, I've done a really important thing and it's really important for me to stay alive, but I don't really know who is evil or how to proceed from here. So I don't feel like it leads to extremely fun games when I draw it out of the bag, and I feel like it makes my game less fun when its ability affects me. So I don't like it.
All right. Fair enough. How about Atheist?
I don't mind Atheist. I think that storytellers need to run Atheist in the proper way. Atheist is not a free pass to mess with your players. Atheist
Mm-hmm.
is about designing a puzzle that your players will eventually solve and enjoy. I have only run a couple Atheist games, um, and my goal when I'm running an Atheist game is for my players to figure it out on final day. Um, like the storyteller can break the rules is there so you can simulate an evil team. It's not there so you can tell everyone they're secretly evil and could win with you, and like your goal is to make your players have fun, and you
Right.
should think very carefully about what will lead to a fun game, because Atheist is already difficult for a lot of players because um good players are going to be called evil consistently, and that can be very stressful for some good players. So think about who you're framing as the evil team, and can they handle it, and can they figure it out. And those are the questions you should be asking yourself when you are storytelling an Atheist game. Not, how can I mess with my little playthings as an all powerful overlord? That's not the question you should be asking yourself when you run an Atheist game.
Absolutely. All right. Next character on the list, Heretic.
I think Heretic is all right for, like, I just think it's a experienced character only role, experienced player only role.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually I think this is what Ben Burns likes to say is it's one person is not going to be responsible for the any team winning or losing because it's a team game, which is true on Trouble Brewing. And like for the most part, it's true on a cup and on BMR and S&V. I would say Snake Charmer can be responsible for their team winning or losing, and sometimes the Demon could be responsible for their team losing. But usually, you've got a solid team that's working with you. When you are the Heretic, you are responsible for your team winning or losing. If evil figures out what you are, you'll probably lose. And if you tell the wrong people, like that's so. I think Heretic is like all sort of damsel level in that
Mm-hmm.
it's an outsider that has extreme power and needs to do a certain thing, but it has to be extremely careful about who they trust. So I just think Heretic can lead to uh, difficult or bad feeling games if your players aren't ready for it. But I think it's a fine role that was designed in a fun way. It's just that like it's a role that completely changes how the game is played, and everybody needs to be aware of how that change is working when you're dealing with a heretic.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's an advanced character, and I think it takes a little bit of time to kind of work out what to do, what strategies to make all that happen.
Yeah, it adds another layer to the game, which is fun. Like it's a character like Marionette that changes the game by being on the script. And it changes how you play any game of that script, no matter if the heretic's in or out of the game. But you have to realize that your playstyle should be changing because Heretic's on the script. And if you don't, it can lead to games where you don't have as much fun because you don't
Mm-hmm.
understand. So, yeah.
All right, one more character for this list. How do you feel about Legion?
I think a lot of people play Legion too passively. Um, like I think it's a fun design demon. And you like your first time seeing Legion, people are like, oh my god, it's so strong for evil. But I've been Legion a lot. And Legion only wins if they hard commit. If they coordinate with each other. So you need Legion, whenever you talk to another Legion, you need to tell them all of the other Legion and what they're bluffing so that you can coordinate bluffs properly. If every Legion does that on every conversation, you can have bluffs coordinated by the end of day one, which is your goal. If that doesn't work out, it's the Legion who dies night two. It's their responsibility to coordinate the Legion's bluffs because they're dead. I feel strongly about this. Um, and then you can't like Legion. Good players in a Legion game don't want to lay down and die. Legion
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be less willing to lay down and just die as well. And also, pro tip for Legion is don't let people think it's Legion until, as long as you can put off people thinking it's Legion, the better chance you have of winning because people will be confused. You
Mm-hmm.
want them to think it's another demon. You want to push those worlds hard. You want to get your dead Legion trusted. Um, like Legion is not a sit back and relax and my teammates will carry me to victory demon. It's a we are collectively a demon and we need to work to win. And if you do that, it can be terrifying. And like as a good player, it can be very scary. But if a lot of the Legion are like playing passively or being like, oh, there's so many of us, someone's gonna make it to the end, the good players will find each other because they're the only ones that are panicking. And so they
Yeah,
will figure it out.
I'm curious what you think about this because you mentioned Legion needing to be not just laying down, trying to make it look like it's a different demon. I see Legion as very theatrical, so to speak, because it's a majority of a group trying to put on a show for a smaller group. And
Yeah.
for me, that's always an interesting way to think about Legion. And some people like that, and some people don't. But
Legion
yeah,
is like that. I would say Atheist is kind of like that. And I would say
yeah,
Heretic sort of, if Heretic is played correctly, a subset of the good team is putting on a show, making it look like they are losing when they are actually winning. So I
hmm
think a lot of those characters actually fall into that box of working with other people to create a show. That's a good
yeah.
way of putting it.
I guess it's more of an extreme version of. I mean, it's a social deception game, so it's just kind of like cranking up that lever, so to speak. All right. Well, we have a section here. I like to do basically just call it multiple choice. It's very open ended. So the first question is Noble, Magician, or Alsahir?
Also here.
What do you like about the Alsahir?
I find that when I play the game, something I've played the game a lot. So, and I play the game with the same people a lot. So sometimes I can solve the game and then it is difficult for me to convince people that that is correct because people don't trust me because they know me and rightly so. So I like the idea of also here. I've never actually been it, but I like the idea of it because if I can figure it out, I can just win and I don't need to convince anybody. So yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Your next question is Snitch, Plague Doctor, or Politician?
I think Snitch. I I've never managed to win as evil as the politician, and I rarely try to. Just because I'm not that chaotic of a person, so it's very difficult for me. Um, Plague Doctor is like anxiety for the whole game, And Snitch is like, well, I've already done the bad things, so
Right.
I just get to hang out now. Yeah.
All right. Next one we got fearmonger, marionette, or psychopath.
Okay. I like being all of these minions actually for different reasons, but I will say psychopath.
Psychopath is a common answer when it comes up.
Yeah.
And usually it's all about the power, but what is it about you? What is it that you like about psychopath?
I like playing out at evil. Because I like getting people to forget that I'm out at evil because I just seem so lovely and trustworthy. And then like that having them realize that they shouldn't be trusting me is just a fun sort of way of messing with people's minds. And I like power. I like people dying when you say it's very like validating. um Yeah. I've only been Puppet Grower once, but it was a really very, very fun game. So
Some of the funnest or some of the happiest I've ever seen players is when they draw that psychopath token and they get to use it. And it's just sheer joy for a lot of people.
yeah, it's very fun.
Speaking of marionette, if you're a demon with a marionette, do you tell them or do you not tell them?
It depends on their preference. And also it depends on my read of if they are going to be if they can hide it once they know they're evil or not. So it's totally like I'll rely on my judgment. Sometimes the player will just tell me before the game, like if I'm the marionette, don't tell me, so I won't. Like I respect that player's choice. There's some players who I'm like, if you're my marionette, I want to tell you because you are gonna be so strong for evil once you know you're evil that it's very important that I tell you early because you as a minion, just who you are, is stronger than the misinformation you could be generating as good. And there's some people who I'm like, when you are getting poisoned, you will fuck up the game. So I'm gonna leave you poisoned and tell you later because you existing as a poisoned good player is gonna be extremely detrimental to the good team. And so, it'll depend on who it is completely, really.
All right, one more multiple choice question. Al Hadikia, Leviathan, or Yagababble?
Oh, Yagababble.
You like Yagababble?
I've never actually been the Yagababble. I've drawn it out of the bag and then we had to re-rack. I've been the lunatic Yagababble, but I've never actually been the Yagababble, and I think I would do great, and I just want to do it.
As a storyteller, it's one of the most stressful demons to run, I think, because I feel like there's so much riding on having a good phrase.
So something that my friend, shout out to Ryan, did when we first played Yagababble is he would give the demon two phrases and they could pick. And that gives them back some agency, and it lets you give them like maybe one phrase that's sort of generic that you could use in any game, like I think they might be drunk, and one phrase that's sort of like specific to this group, like James is probably evil. And so they can like pick, do they want to go with a generic phrase or a specific phrase for the game? And that's what I try to do when I'm running Yag, is give my Yag two phrases to pick from, just to make their life a little more easy.
Yeah, I've definitely worked with players before. Not necessarily give two choices, although more like a back and forth, like, okay, here's a phrase. How do you feel about this? Do you want it reworded that would fit more with, what would be normal for you? What I like about Yagababble, so when I first discovered the ability, I was very much not a fan of it. I was like, this just seems like it'd be awful. And every time I've seen it in play, the first time I was in a game with it, it turned out to be Yagababble, and we had no idea until after the Grim reveal. And when I ran it, when it first came out, two different players with the Yagababble, both were extremely nervous about it, and nobody knew knew that was that they were the Yagababble. Actually, the first gameplay video we put up on this channel was one of the Yagababble reveal games, and the player very well bluffed Savant, and everybody just believed he was Savant because he did such a good job at. He was very nervous about it, but he did it, and nobody knew he was the Yagababble until it was too late.
Yeah, that's great. I think Yagababble can definitely be like difficult because you're thinking about so many other things on top of the game, like how you're going to say your phrase.
Yeah.
But I think it can be quite rewarding to win as Yagababble. Yeah.
All right. Well, we got one final question here for you. So, looking at the script here that you've written, which character would you like to be in real life?
Oh, like, can you clarify like that as that occupation?
I can clarify, but I won't.
Sorry. Okay.
So I like leaving it open-ended. You can interpret it however you would like.
Maybe I'll cut out my thinking so hard. I'll go with fisherman. I like fishing in real life.
All right. And hopefully that means you'll get some advice on how to win.
Yeah, I'd also love some advice on how to win at life.
Right, exactly. All right. Well, so thank you for joining this week, Kohava. It was good to have you.
Yeah, it was really fun. I love talking about myself.
All right,
and about Clocktower.
Yeah, that's why we're here. That's why this works for me, is I just enjoy talking about Clocktower. All right. Well, thank you all for watching this week. We'll be back with another episode of Hard Claim. Catch you later.